Hi guys, what is going on? Thanks for stopping by. Welcome to my channel where I focus on free-to-play, early game, mid-game stuff. Guys, today's video is going to be about soloing dungeons and what we can do if we can't solo. Because on my account, for example, Mikey is my solo champion. He solos Ice Golem and Dragon Slayer for me, which are the two gear dungeons that we really want to solo. But even with his 5-star soul, his relic, and with everything that comes in his kit, it is still very hard to do it. So on my account, he needs every single stat. He needs resistance, accuracy, survivability, speed, and damage. And if you can't solo something with Mikey, and by the way, the solo build that I have is also lifesteal, so we don't get set bonuses as well. So this build is actually pretty hard. That being said, I have a damage build on him here on the screen. And the reason for this is that I want to show him in a duo team. If you can't solo stuff, just put another champion, put a support next to Mikey, and these two are going to have a much easier time than Mikey by himself. It's kind of like spreading stats if you want to, because you can build your support and resistance if that is needed, and then Mikey can focus on what he really needs to do. And this is the same for any other solo champion as well. If you want to take pressure off of your damage dealer, just put in another champion, and then you'll still be able to slot in 3 pieces of food next to your 2 champions duoing the dungeon. Now, stage 20 is definitely the easiest one to do, at least in comparison to the other stages that are relatively efficient in terms of gear and in terms of points for tournaments. So stage 20 has the big advantage of being relatively easy. At the same time, it gives us the best return for energy spent in tournaments, so that is really, really great. And it gives us, you know, decent gear. Decent gear, not as good as stage 24 or something above that. But in case you want to triple dip and you have a dragon tournament going on, a champion training tournament going on, it's fusion time or something, and you really want to be careful with your resources, then the best thing you can do is solo or duo dungeons, get gear, build champions, and get tournament points at the same time and be extremely efficient. So what kind of champions do we need in order to duo stuff? First off, damage dealer, and then also a support. Now, the damage dealer is pretty straightforward. This is just my usual damage build for Mikey, and you can just leave that on your champion and go for it. That's the great thing. You don't need to worry about resistance and survivability as much as you would usually do. That being said, speed over 200 is definitely great, because it means that you'll take 2 turns for every 1 turn that the enemy waves and the enemy boss takes, at least on stage 20 for Dragon Slayer and Ice Golem. Also, you'll need a reasonable amount of survivability, but I think that's not going to be a problem on Mikey, because he has that soul and because he has his passive. So we should be relatively fine with him, and it should be relatively easy for us to build him like this. That being said, if you're using another champion for damage, do look out for a bit of survivability. It won't be as important to have survivability if you bring a reviver as the support champion. And Tagore is a great example here. What are we looking for in the support? We are looking for healing, more survivability for our damage dealer, possibly reviving, and also him resisting debuffs is something that will be very, very useful and will ensure that he can actually do the support for your damage dealer that is needed. For example, if he doesn't have resistance and both of them get stunned, that he won't be able to heal up the damage dealer and he won't be able to heal up himself, and that might lead to a wipe potentially, but you'll have to see what works on your account. You don't necessarily need resistance on a duo team, but I guess it is recommended, and you'll definitely need survivability on your supporter. Now, my Tagore isn't built, unfortunately. I'm sorry, I can't really give you the perfect showcase here. I hope you'll get the idea though. The thing is, I can't spend like crazy amounts of resources right now. Everything's a bit tight on my account, and so I have a good replacement for Tagore, but I thought I'd call him out because many people get him as a download link, and he is part of a lot of download links. So a lot of people have him. I think a lot of people have built him anyways, and he's a great option. But I do have a decent replacement. I have Hanurak as a replacement. Now, I said resistance would be great. Yeah, I tried to build her with resistance without spending too many resources, and it wasn't it's unfortunately it doesn't happen. Again, I'm sorry if this isn't the perfect showcase, but you get the idea. And she brings us a mini cleanse on the passive, which should help us to survive against enemies who try to stun us or place decreased defense or something like that. It should help, but we'll see how well it works. Then we have a heal on the A1, which actually just goes to her and the ally with the lowest HP, which is great. She does not have a revive. She brings us decreased attack on the A2 and block buffs. And the block buffs is really important for Ice Golem, but we'll first do Dragon here. And then we have increased speed and increased defense on the A3, which is definitely the most important skill here in order to boost our survivability next to the healing. Because the decreased attack, we already get that from Mikey. Alright guys, so I hope this gives you a good idea. To have an aura is very nice as well. Mikey and her have the same aura, accuracy in all battles, that can be very nice. Now in order to make this realistic, I took off some of her gear so that she isn't too strong. 45k HP should be enough, 3000 defense, 216 speed. For soloing or duoing stuff, speed is very important. But if, like I said, if you're above 200, that should give you 2 turns for every 1 turn that the enemy takes, so that should be fine. And then I have her in quite a lot of accuracy. This is also great. The accuracy is definitely overboard. You could go much lower with the accuracy due to the auras that we have on the team. You could go down to 170 and the aura would push that to 240 and that would be enough. And then it is easier to build 305 resistance, which is what we need for stage 20 on Ice Golem and on Dragon. Now, a soul is going to make it much easier. Also having a relic is going to be something that's really, really great. And then in terms of masteries, I think you could argue that if you have a support and he profits from defense and the support line anyways, then this is definitely a viable option. War Master is going to make it quicker though, to do a bit more damage to bosses. You'll have to see what works, like I said, but it's definitely a great thing on the defense side if you have trouble surviving. To decrease the damage from AoEs, bosses do mostly AoE damage, increase the amount of healing and the value of shield buffs this champion receives, and then we can also increase the amount of healing this champion does on the support side, and then we'll have reduces the damage this champion receives from a specific enemy up to 6%. That's also great. And then the support line can bring you really nice utility as well. In terms of the last masteries on the defense and support side, I want to call out Bulwark, because it decreases the damage all allies receive by 5%, taking off damage off of your damage dealer. And then if you have an AoE reviver, Timely Intervention is pretty crazy. Increases this champion's turn meter by 20% whenever an ally hero drops below 25%. So he gets his support, he gets turn meter in order to support more and to be ready to revive when an ally potentially dies. Now, I want to call out something with the revivers, and especially AoE revivers. Like Tagore would basically get full turn meter here when an AoE comes in and all the food dies. However, the food can also slow down your runs, because AoE reviving the food can mean that if the enemy waves only do single target damage, that some of the food champions are going to take turns, and that can slow down the run. So that's a little caveat here, a little problem. So I think, yeah, having a support that gives you these two can be useful. If you don't need it, just go War Master. It's going to make stuff quicker. All right, I think 2 more things that I really want to talk about here. First off, soloing and duoing can mean that you'll need different presets in terms of gear, so that the champion really meets the requirements in order to solo stuff in comparison to the gear that he usually has. So my Mikey is the best example for this. I was already talking about his solo build. I have his solo build in the preset manager down here, so I can just slot that on. The preset manager is your friend, really. It's really easy to use it, and I don't like to have too many champions with presets because you really lose track of where your gear is at, and you know, you have to rip off gear of other champions whenever you switch the build, at least if you don't have as much gear as a endgame player. And so I don't like to have too many things, too many crazy presets, but having some from Mikey, for example, is definitely very, very useful. Now, the other thing that's very useful is the raid stages tool from Hell Hades. I've talked about this a couple of times on my videos. Just type in Hell Hades stages tool. It has helped me a ton, and you can see what kind of stats you need. Like I said, 305 resistance for the dragon and then 225 accuracy. That's going to be fine. Usually the minions are lower than that, and that's the case here as well. So just to give you an idea, we mainly look at the speed, accuracy and resistance. And then the last thing I want to talk about before we go into a run here is these team presets we have right here. It can be very, very important depending on the dungeon. Mikey, for example, I want him to use his decreased defense first in order to increase the damage that we'll do with the AoE following that. That's at least very important against the waves. I guess it is important against the dragon as well, so we'll put that in here as well. Now remember, we take 2 turns before the enemy takes 1, and that is going to mean that decrease attack is going to be out there as well before the enemies start to attack us, and that is going to be very useful. Now, because of that, I will turn this off on stage 1, on stage 2, and also on stage 3. Yeah, I'll leave it on default. The reason for this is we have, against the dragon, we have the situation that he's good affinity against Mikey, so Mikey's bad affinity for the dragon. And that can really mean that if we lose out on a decrease attack on the dragon, that we might wipe against the dragon actually. So I think I'll leave that for the dragon, but Mikey should place enough decreased defense on the minions so that we won't need the decrease attack from Tuhanarak against the minions, and that is going to mean more heals from the A1. But I haven't tried this run yet, so this is going to be very interesting. And we can see what works and what doesn't work going into this. Now, we have a champion training tournament going on, so this is not wasted energy, which is very nice. And I'll just slot in these 3, which I am currently training in the champion training as well. Let's go into the run and see how this does. I'm actually very interested because I feel like if we get bad RNG, then that's always a problem. And to Hanurak, like I said, she's not a reviver, so that can be a bit unfortunate. But let's see what's happening here. All right, decreased defense not being spread. That's a bit of a pity. Unfortunately, I have a healing relic on Mikey, and I can't take that off all the time when I make a video. But that would give you a bit of a, if I could, that would give you a bit of a better idea how well this actually works. I will show that relic in a second. I always forget the name. So he has self-healing as well, but we can already see how many continuous heal buffs to Hanurak places on Mikey, and also the shield really helps. So it really feels like a safe thing against the waves here. I'll show you if it gets close at any point, but I doubt it. Like I said, the waves really weren't too much of a problem. The only thing that you really need to watch out for is Hordin. That's a champion that is mostly on the second wave. I think there's 2 of him, and he hits pretty hard, so you need decent survivability. Now, the great thing about duoing the dragon, for example, is that you do relatively good damage with your damage dealer because he can focus on damage. And on dragon, this is really important because the longer the fight takes and the more often he uses this skill, this loading skill here, this purple one, the more potent that damage is going to become, and he is going to do more damage to your team. This is already the 2nd Scourge, and we are over half health, which is pretty great. Like, this whole thing seems pretty safe. We have decreased attack out there. As you can see, pretty decent damage from the dragon, but we'll easily be able to survive a 3rd Scourge here, a 3rd big damage ability, but I think we won't get to that because Mikey really puts in some work, even though we are bad affinity. And that is the great thing here. Mikey is so strong with all the buffs and debuffs that he can even get past being bad affinity, and Brimstone really, really helps. And even with bad RNG, this should be a 100% safe run. So yeah, I'm actually very happy this worked. So the good thing here is we didn't need resistance. That being said, Hanurak did cleanse off 1 stun against the dragon. We didn't need a reviver, and the survivability was definitely enough for this stage. And we also didn't need golden elixir here on Mikey. That really didn't have an impact. Alright guys, let's talk about the Ice Golem next. I already mentioned that block buffs is going to be one of the most important debuffs here, and I want to talk about an epic champion that can be absolutely amazing for this. Ugo. I think she's the perfect example, or might just be the perfect champion to duo the Ice Golem next to a damage dealer. The A1, not too important, but the A2 brings us block buffs and decreased defense. And the block buffs is going to mean that the second wave on Ice Golem can't place the reflect damage, and that is going to mean that your damage dealer is not going to kill himself attacking the minions. And then also she removes heal reduction debuffs from all allies, which is important against the boss minions, and one other random debuff, so potentially either a stun or a decreased defense. Also very nice looking at the boss. And if all allies are dead, so in case, like the food is going to be dead anyways, and in case Mikey dies as well, then this skill is going to revive all allies and fills their turn meter by 50%. So she takes so many bosses next to healing you as well here. She takes so many bosses, it's huge. It's really, really great. Like I said, you could build her with a resistance so that she can actually use this cleanse when it is needed and isn't frozen herself. And I think she is amazing for this. Luckily, Tuhanarak is pretty great as well. For the presets, I recommend that you turn off the A2. You could use it as an opener, but it's not really necessary. And then use it as your first choice always against the second wave, so the reflect damage isn't placed. And then here I would turn this off again. Mikey is good affinity here, so he is reliably going to place decreased attack. We don't need it from Tuhanarak, and so Tuhanarak can concentrate on increased defense and healing us. Mikey again, first choice decreased defense, second choice AoE attack. Let's go into the fight. So coming to the second wave here, this is just on auto. The disadvantage of Tuhanarak is that if the first block buffs that she places is resisted, then she's also not going to spread that, and that could fail the run. The advantage of Ugo is that every block buffs has his own resistance check, and so you won't be resisted 5 debuffs at once, you know, because the chances of being resisted is only 3%, even if you have very high accuracy, and that's something that's a bit weird. We can see here that we do take damage a couple of times, but it seems like the survivability is really enough. And then against the boss here, Mikey and also Tuhanarak are going to prioritize the minions, and that is going to mean that we won't get too many attacks from the Ice Golem in succession, and we don't do too much damage to the Ice Golem. That's what I'm trying to say, because that would trigger the big smashes coming in. And so this run should be relatively safe. Also, Mikey has good affinity here, so he is, you know, dishing out some damage, which is very nice. If that wasn't the case, this run would definitely be slower, just like Dragon. That being said, against the Ice Golem, it's always a small grind. It's always a small run, a slow grind and slow run. But yeah, as you can see, this feels relatively safe. Guys, that's it for the video. Thanks for stopping by. I hope this has been interesting. I hope this has been informative. If you have any questions about champions being able to duo a certain dungeon, please just drop that down below. I can give you my suggestions, and I can tell you if I feel like the champions that you have on your account might be able to duo either Ice Golem, Dragon, or both, or maybe even other stuff. Like, if you can solo this or duo this, then you will definitely be able to solo or duo the Minotaur's Labyrinth, for example, Arcane Keep. There is other stuff. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye.